When the National Disability Insurance Scheme was established, it was supposed to make life better for our most vulnerable, and there's no doubt it has helped. But the system is also badly flawed. In a bid to rein in spending, the federal government recently changed the parameters around how and what people can claim, which has suddenly left families, many with severely disabled children, without basic needs.
They use terminology such as no value for money, which is just so degrading, that there is no value to provide a wheelchair for my disabled child who can't walk. I mean, how do you stomach that as any parent, but especially one whose child is disabled? It's discrimination and it's bordering on human rights issues.
At just 8 weeks old, Erin's daughter, Lulus, was diagnosed with a rare form of epilepsy. Later, it developed into Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, which is much more severe. At her worst, she was suffering 100 seizures a day.
These seizures affect the brain dramatically and cause irreparable damage and a lot of disabilities.
Now she has around 10, but there's no telling when they'll occur or how dangerous they will be.
She cannot walk, she cannot talk, she cannot self-feed, and she remains incontinent.
For someone at home that wouldn't understand Lulus' condition, what does it take to look after her every day?
Her current developmental capacity is really that of, say, a 6 to 12-month-old, but in a 5-year-old body. So you can imagine how challenging that would be, manoeuvring her around, managing seizures, changing nappies, bathing, feeding.
It's little wonder Lulus needs to be watched round the clock.
All day, every day, 4 to 6 hours a night, we are up with Lulus because she is seizing and needs to be medicated and needs constant supervision in case she has lack of breathing or an ambulance needs to be called.
Erin says the NDIS recently cut Lulus' funding, putting an end to her at-home care, heaping more pressure on Erin and her husband as they also raise their 2-year-old son. But it's not just the at-home care that's been denied.
They have outright refused funding for a wheelchair. She can't walk and she weighs 15 kilos. I can't carry her everywhere, and she's 5 years of age. She's outgrown prams and they're not suitable for her. She needs a wheelchair.
Erin is one of many victims of major cost-cutting changes to the National Disability Insurance Scheme, including alterations to what's considered NDIS support.
They're just taking funding away and essential services and needs and technologies and equipment from children like Lulu without understanding how detrimental and how dangerous it is really to be doing this. So we do a fair bit of screen time, unfortunately. I love my daughter. I love her more than life itself. But epilepsy is just barbaric. It just steals so much on so many levels. Disrupt her, she doesn't.
Erin's furious the NDIS assesses the child's needs without ever meeting them in person. She claims her reports weren't properly looked at. Here, a letter from the scheme calls Lulus by the wrong name.
This is kind of the prognosis for the rest of her life. She probably won't ever live independently. We'll be her full-time carers. And it's really scary to think about that. What happens when we're at an age where we can't look after her? What happens when we die?
What your titty?
They make assessments about people or participants in the NDIS scheme through paperwork, through a computer screen.
Alicia's daughter, Koa, lives with a rare and incurable neurological condition.
I'm out of it.
The 3-year-old also suffers from advanced cerebral palsy and chronic lung disease.
Koa lives her life on oxygen. She is on life support. She has constant suctioning, nebulizers.
Bubble, bubble, pop. I see your wrist move.
Music therapy was a simple activity that helped Koa deal with her pain. She loved it, but it's now been axed from her plan. Alicia says it was proven to the NDIS the therapy was beneficial to Koa's quality of life.
So when it decided to remove music and art therapy from its scheme, that deeply saddened and affected Koa and our family.
Sit over here and read a book with Ava.
Funding for Koa's in-home care has also been slashed. Alicia fears if it's cut any further, her daughter will need to live at hospital.
Every child deserves to be at home with their family. Every child deserves to be sleeping under the same roof as their mum and dad.
After the federal government changed its funding guidelines, it announced it would inject $1 billion into the scheme to hire 1,000 more staff and to crack down on fraud. Families, though, don't trust the process and fear funding isn't going where it should. These are just some of the many emails we've received. Our inbox here at A Current Affair is flooded every day with people desperate to share their stories, desperate for help.
It's really frustrating feeling not heard and feeling like we constantly have to justify ourselves and feeling invalidated and not believed.
Renee is a mother of 5. 4 of her children live with disabilities.
2 months ago, my son got everything approved that the therapist had asked for. However, 2 months later, after the NDIS changes, NDIS didn't approve anything.
Parents across the country, tired and desperate for help.
We're very, very exhausted and very burnt out trying to do the best we can as parents.
Those with a disability especially, they deserve the chance to be able to have somewhat of a normal life because they've already faced with so much adversity from the start.
All of our lives are isolated now. It's definitely nothing like what we thought parenting would be.
That's heartbreaking. And Bill Shorten is the minister who looks after the NDIS. We asked him to come on tonight to clear up any questions about the scheme before he retires from Parliament next year. But he declined.